All right, so I'll just put these down real fast for you. So this is what we're going to go through tonight. Felt like I was on Jeopardy there for a second. All right, everybody got it?
It's okay.
Okay, so about me. My name is Ed. Everyone say Ed.
Ed.
And my Hebrew name is Ed, so everyone say Ed.
Ed.
Ed in Hebrew means witness, and I am a witness of the fantastic, marvelous grace of God. So that is my Hebrew name as well as my English name, Ed and Ed. I'm 60 years old. My birthday is 12/30. All right, so birthday presents are suggested. Just kidding, just kidding.
Baby. So December 30th.
Hush. No. Yes. No. I'm 60 years old. Will be 61 in December. What I'm telling you, the reason why I'm telling you this is I've been around a long time. Okay, so I'm kind of one of the aged ones. In Judaism, I would no longer be allowed to head up a synagogue. That is turned over at the age of 50. That is turned over to the younger one. So I'm 10 years over that, but still waiting for someone to step up, Angel. Still waiting for someone to step up and take over the position. All right. So yes, by that you cannot be a rabbi until you're 30 years old. When did Yeshua start his ministry? 30. You cannot be a rabbi by Orthodox tradition that go back to the days of Yeshua. You cannot be a rabbi until you're 30 years old. By that time, what you have gone through is you have gone through the training at the synagogue, and then when you graduate from the training at the synagogue, you become a Talmid. Everyone say Talmid, Talmid, which means disciple of a rabbi. And you are the Talmid of that rabbi for up to 15 years. Before you are permitted to become a rabbi yourself. So if you think that going through seminary and all of that is hard and arduous, becoming a rabbi is even more so. It's even more difficult to become a rabbi. So getting my training and my, what do you call it? I've got bar mitzvah on the mind. As a pastor, my licensing as a pastor, did not take near as long, and it would not take you near as long as becoming a rabbi. It takes an Orthodox Jew. Okay, so it can take 15 years of being a Talmid to a rabbi. Being a Talmid to a rabbi, we'll get into this. It does not mean what we think of as being a member of a church or something like that. Well, this is my pastor. When you said that this is my rabbi, this is my Ravi. Say Ravi. Ravi means my great one, or if you can use the term Baal or Adonai, but this is my great one. Rav, from the word Rav, means great, big. So this is my master, basically, is what you're saying when you say Ravi, which is why you find in the Brit Chadashah, the New Testament, you find the Talmid calling him what? Master. They call him Master or Lord because he's over them. The closer you are to him, the closer you are to him. The further you are from him, the further you are from him. So those who were really close to him sat really close to him. Not just Yeshua. This is the way it is even today. The closer you are to him, the closer you are to him. The further back in the class you are, the more distant you are spiritually, emotionally, mentally from your rabbi. So it was to try to get to the front seat. That was the deal. That was the deal. And then to become the favored son of the Talmidim, of the students. A Talmid is a student, okay, from Talmud, to learn, to teach, to understand. So Talmud is a teaching. So Talmud is a teaching. So when we speak of the Talmud as a source, it's a book of teachings, of instructions for us. So a Talmid is a student who's learning. Okay, and so they were the Talmidim of Yeshua. They were his students, but they were going through a discipline, just as when you go to college. You go through a discipline in college. Okay, so when I was in college, my discipline, I had 2 disciplines, a major and a minor. My major discipline was speech for broadcasting purposes. Okay, so I was going into radio and television, and that was my discipline. Okay, my minor was Jewish studies. Okay, and I think it's up there on the board. So I minored in Jewish studies. That means that my classes were divided mostly between speech things, English language things, subjects, and Jewish subjects on Judaism. And so most of my time would be spent in those 2 areas. Most of my time studying where I was, where I would be located, all of these things. In fact, I spent a whole semester simply training in the radio station there on the campus. And that training, that I would have a teacher sitting there one-on-one with me. And I had to pay for this class. He sat there one-on-one with me to make sure that I was a disc jockey and make sure I was loading the records up right. Back then, you had to have a license to broadcast on public radio, and you had to take math tests. And I'm horrible at math. You had to do algebraic equations and some geometry, and because you had to figure out where your signal was going, how strong your signal was, and where it was going. And so you had to, and it was very important because you would cross over onto somebody else's signal. They would get very upset with you, and the radio station could be fined for that. And so you had to do these things in order to get licensed. And so he would sit there with me for an entire semester. Every day in the afternoon, I had a set schedule. Every day in the afternoon, I had to go to the radio station and sit there for about 2 hours and act as though I were doing an actual broadcast with all of the equipment, everything there, to make sure. And then he would give me a grade at the end of the semester. So what I'm saying is that is the focus. That is the where you are. That is where your concentration is. Okay, so in order to be a rabbi, you are really focused on these things, much more than even being a pastor. Okay, I grew up as an MK, missionary kid, PK, pastor's kid. Okay, my parents were missionaries. They came to South Texas as missionaries. I was born here. I was born here in Harlingen, raised in Rio Hondo, and still live in Rio Hondo, still live on the old farm that my parents bought back when I was a baby. They came down. My dad's from San Antonio. My mom's from Philadelphia. They met during World War II, and they got married a couple of months after World War II was over. They got married, started a family. I'm one of 10 children. Okay, Dad believed in it. The Bible says, "Go out and multiply, recover the earth," and Dad took it personally. And so, Dr. Keeler, I don't know how many of y'all know Dr. Keeler. He passed away just recently. He was one of the doctors that had worked on me in my past because I was always breaking things. And he told my mom dislocated her shoulder one time, and he told her, he asked her how many kids she had, and she said 10. And he said, "Well, y'all didn't have TV back then, did you?" Anyway, so I grew up here as a missionary kid. My parents were missionaries all of my life. My dad was a pastor until he turned the church over to me. I was ordained when I think I was 22 years old, back in the early 80s, and I was ordained as a Baptist minister back then. So from the time of my early 20s until today, I was actually ministering. I started preaching when I was 15 years old. It's when I started preaching at my dad's church. And so I've been in the ministry for a long time. I've been doing these things for a long, long time. And I understand being raised in a pastor's home, in a missionary's home, you get the biblical training and all of these kinds of things. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand where I'm coming from, how I know what I know, why I believe I'm correct in these things. And the basic answer is I've been doing this for a very, very long time. Okay? And so I started this ministry about 8 years ago. We started this ministry, Harlingen Messianic Assembly. We started as a home group, and it grew from a home group to where we couldn't meet in the home anymore. And so we moved just a couple of blocks away. It's where we were located, Gonzalez Insurance Building. We had actually a very nice room over there. We loved that room over there that we had. It was very, very nice inside and tiled and everything. But Mr. Gonzalez needed the space, and so he said, "Well, I have a building over here you can use," and we can't complain because he's been very nice with us, and he dumped our rent I don't know how many times over there, and just he's been very kind to us and everything. So we've taken what he's given to us with grace and with pleasure, with thankfulness in our heart, praying for a place of our own, of course, but until then, we'll be meeting here until the Lord indicates otherwise. And so we've been here for, anyway, we've been in existence for 8 years. I've been a lover of Israel since I was probably 8 years old. Just full-blown in love with Israel since I was 8 years old. And in my room, when I was a teenager, in my room, you know, most guys in their room, they have posters of girls and rock bands and motorcycles and cars and everything like that. I had a map, a National Geographic map of Israel at the foot of my bed. That was all I had. All the pictures, all whatever. I had a map of Israel at the foot of my bed. So that every night before I went to sleep, the last thing that I would see would be Israel. Every morning when I woke up, the first thing I would see would be Israel. And those would be the first and the last things on my lips. I would be praying for Israel. It's been my heart, my love, my devotion for all of these years. In fact, the reason why I was taking Jewish studies was because I was going to be a missionary to Israel. That was my desire. That was my dream. That was my goal. I met her, beautiful, beautiful lady, in college. She stole me. She robbed the cradle. She's 2 years older than I am, and she just robbed the cradle. But she picked me up. I was coming into the auditorium for evening service, and they were showing a film, and I was lost. I was working on the bus ministry at that time in a Baptist church where I went to college, and she was sitting there with her friends. We're all in the same college, and she's sitting there with her friends. She's sitting on the end seat. She saw me coming down the aisle, and she scooted over, and she said, "Psst, you need a seat?" And I said, "Sure." So I sat down, and before you know it, we're married. You know, I don't know what happened. It was all just it happened. But anyway, her dad, we got married 2 years later. In August 14, 1979, we got married. And her dad took sick just a couple of weeks after the wedding. And he passed away on Thanksgiving Day. We got married in August, and he passed away on Thanksgiving Day. So we left Chattanooga, where I was going to school. We left there and moved to North Carolina, where she's from, to take care of her mom and take care of business over there, those kinds of things, make sure her mom, had to eat and all of those kinds of things. She was not in good health and everything. So we spent not quite a year there, and we had our first son, Stephen, there, and then Mom and Dad came through, and I felt really desirous from the Lord to go and help Mom and Dad. They were here by themselves by that time, and so we felt the need to come down here and help them out. They were getting elderly, and so we moved back down here, and we've been here ever since working. But anyway, so all of this time we've been lovers of Israel. I attended Beth Israel Synagogue, which is here in Harlingen. It's a Reform synagogue here in Harlingen. They were very open with me. They were very nice and kind with me. I still, it's most of the people that are there today are not the same people. In fact, most of the people there today don't know me. But there are a few that are still there that do know me. But I went there for 8 years. In going there, what happened? I worked in a construction company, and that was one of the jobs we had, was to remodel that synagogue. And so we did the remodeling. One day I was in the middle of, I was on my break, and they had a lot of Talmud books and different study books and guides and all this kind of stuff. So I pulled one down, and I was just leafing through it looking for it. The president of the synagogue comes in and he says to me, "Do you like what you're reading?" And I said, I do very much. I enjoy these kinds of things. And so we talked for a while, and at the end of the conversation, he says to me, "Listen, we're having services tonight." It was a Friday night. He said, "We're having services tonight. Why don't you come? You'll be my guest." I said, "Great, I'll be here." And so I did. And that started an 8-year-long relationship with the synagogue there. A week later, the next week, the rabbi asked me if I would like to join their Hebrew class, their beginner's Hebrew class, like you are. I said, yes, I would. He said, "I have to warn you of something." So I have to warn you of something, that you're going to feel like you're back in first grade all over again, okay? You will. You're going to feel like because it's going to trip you up and mess you up and all that. It's not like where you're going from English to Spanish or something else that, one of the Western languages where you've got basically the same lettering and everything. So you basically just have to learn the vowel and the vocalization and the definition of it, but you can read it there. Okay, you're starting off with, you can't even read this language, much less understand it. Okay, so basically it's even worse than first grade, because at least in first grade you understand the words that you're learning to read. This one, you're learning the lettering of a foreign language you don't even understand. So it's going to be fun. Okay, but so for 8 years I sat most of the time, and then they would have Sabbath school class afterwards, where they would take a portion of the Bible, a portion of that week, where they would study it. And so this would be on Shabbat morning. And so Shabbat morning I had first my Hebrew class, and then Shabbat afternoon at lunch we'd go home for lunch, and then come back for Shabbat afternoon to have Sabbath school, to go through the Parsha for that week. What was really cool is most of the time I was alone with the rabbi. So I took my Hebrew classes alone, and I took my Shabbat classes alone. Do you understand what that means? If you're in school, in class, in college class, and you're with the professor one-on-one, how deep you can get with stuff like that? So this is where my information is coming from. Okay, I'm not just a kite blowing in the wind, or a fly-by-night Facebook person, or something like YouTube person, or something like that. I know what I'm talking about, and that's what I'm trying to get you to understand. You may question me, you may question me, you may question me. Most of the time I will have the answer, but I will be honest with you and tell you, yes, I have the answer. I'm not sure what the answer is, or no, I don't have the answer to that. Okay? I will tell you that. There are people that are in here tonight that are taken this class with me once already, and they can testify to these things, everything that I'm telling you. Okay? So if I do not know the answer, I will tell you I do not know the answer to that, but I will find out for you. And I will research it and get back to you and let you know what the answer is. So I'm up top, honest with you. I tried to have integrity with you in all of these things. So I want you to know that you're not wasting your time here. That is very important to me. I have to stand before God and give an answer to Him for what I'm teaching to you. Every time I get behind this table and teach you, whether it's on Shabbat or this one or that one, every time I must give an answer to God one day for everything I've taught you. So anything that is not true or dishonest or whatever that I speak, that comes out of my mouth, then I have to go stand before the King and give an answer to Him, the judge of all judges, and give an answer to Him why I said that was not true, or that was misleading, misguiding, whatever, that was focusing on me, that was giving you misinformation. And I have to answer for that. My responsibility before God is greater than your responsibility, because I have to answer to Him not only for myself but for you as well. So understand me when I say this. I take my teachings very, very seriously. very seriously. I study these things out. I study them out. And if I'm incorrect, I will come back the next lesson and I'll tell you, I'm sorry, I was incorrect about something here, and we'll fix it. Okay? I'm not one that tries to cover it over, or I'm not one that tries to say, if I'm incorrect, I'm incorrect. Okay, I was incorrect. It's no big deal to me. I'm not ashamed of that. We're all humans. We all make mistakes. Okay? But I will correct it if it's pointed out to me. You can point it out to me. In class, you can point it out to me. It doesn't bother me. Okay? My face will turn red a little bit, yes, but that's okay. Okay? That's natural for people of my coloration, my texture. I don't know if that's a term or not. Anyway, so understand that this is where we're coming from. All right, so why should I learn Hebrew? Why should I learn this language? Now, I've had, and we've had, some of you have had, people who come up to you and ask you, why are you learning that? What's the purpose of that? Why are you doing that for? And so I'm going to answer you tonight why you're doing this. Why are you going through this? Number one, please understand me. Bottom line, you are not learning just so you can know. You are not, if you're learning just so you can know, please help yourself and help me, and don't come to these lessons. I'm not being mean with you, but you'll see why in a minute. Okay? It's part of Judaism. It's part of Judaism. Okay? So, the first reason is to help me to understand the context of this religion. The context of this religion. To help me to understand the mindset. Because guess what? Jews don't think like other people. Jews do not think like other people. That is not an anti-Semitic remark. Let me answer a question. Some of you have already asked, some of you have not asked, am I Jewish? Slightly. But I'm more Jewish in my heart than I am in my DNA. But if you ask a rabbi, that's actually what matters. A rabbi will tell you that it's better to be a Gentile who has his heart in Torah and learning Judaism than it is to be a Jew who breaks the law and does not practice Judaism. It is better to be a non-Jew learning Judaism than to be a Jew who refuses to learn Judaism. Next, it helps me to understand Jewish concepts. Because as Jews do not think, they do not have the same mindset as you and I do, nor do they have the same concept. They do not think in the same way. They do not have the same conceptions as you and I have. Their thinking many times, oftentimes, is very, very different from what you would think. And there's a reason for that, which we will get into in a little bit. Because Hebrew is the foundational language behind the Bible. Not Greek, not Latin, not English, Hebrew. There are churches today that teach that the English translation, you've heard of them, the King James only people, and that the King James actually corrects the Hebrew. That's ludicrous. That's foolishness. How can that be? How can a language that came, literally thousands of years later, correct the original language, which is God's language? You'll see in a minute. Hebrew is God's language, yes.
Do you think we're going to speak Hebrew once we all go to heaven?
Yes, you will speak Hebrew.
All of us?
All of us.
Always wanted that.
It will be the language of the world. Remember, we'll get into it in a minute, remember that the language of the world was one at one time. It was the rebellion of man that caused God to bring confusion about. He confused what? The languages. Okay? We'll see more to that. Some of this stuff is going to blow your mind. Like cap, like the cap that you wear on your head. Like elephant. Yeah. They actually come from the Hebrew. Those are actually Hebrew words. You'll see. Okay? help to understand the context of the teachings of Yeshua. So let me ask you, what language did he speak? Hebrew. Okay? He also spoke Aramaic. I would not be surprised that he spoke Greek and Latin because he's Mashiach. So he's able to speak in all languages. But the main two sources, his main two languages were, he was bilingual, were Hebrew and Aramaic. Hebrew, because that is the language that was spoken. Now people say, well, he spoke Aramaic, he didn't speak Hebrew. That's foolishness. Again, why is that foolishness? Because Hebrew is the language of Yerushalayim, is the language of the temple, and that's where he spent much of his time. Teaching the people. Okay? In fact, when they talk about uneducated, when the Pushim, when the Kohanim, the Pharisees and the priests, when they speak of these uneducated people, why were they called uneducated? Because they were talking about those people that come in here talking like this and calling everybody y'all and all y'all and you're a bunch of hypocrites and all this kind of stuff, and they're all talking like a bunch of hillbillies. And for Orthodox Judaism of that time, for the Jerusalem Judaism of that time, the people from the Galil, guess where they're from? The hills of Galilee are a bunch of hillbillies. They're a bunch of uneducated rednecks. They're a bunch of farmers. Does that sound familiar? They're a bunch of cowboys carrying their Bibles and their guns. All right, anyway. They're a bunch of, and so that he spoke Aramaic. Yes, he spoke Aramaic because that was the language of Galil. Okay? That was the language of his home. Not Notzat. That was the language of his home, of Nazareth. That wasn't the only language, though. They were trilingual there, too. Actually, quadrilingual. Because up there, I'm getting ahead of myself. Talmidim, which are what? Disciples or students, and Rab Shaul. All right? So when we get it, we're going to get into some things. There's some things that people just misunderstand about Paul. They're not getting it. Because if you believe what most of the church teaches concerning what Paul taught, one, he's a hypocrite, or two, he's a liar. Concerning following Judaism and concerning following Torah. Either he's a hypocrite or he's a liar. Why? Because he did. And he also taught them to. And we're going to see some of that. So this is why, because this will help you understand these things. Okay? Why learn Hebrew? To become acquainted with Jewish heritage. So, how many Jews do we have here? And how many Gentiles do we have here? How many Jews? How many Jews? Okay.
I have Jewish DNA, but not.
Okay. How many Gentiles do we have here? Okay. And how many of you say, I don't know, I don't care. Let me go to my Galil redneck. It don't make no never mind to me. Anyway, so. That's what Wilma and her kinfolk would say. Anyway, she's a hillbilly. She's from the hills of North Carolina. How many of you, one more question, how many of you believe that Yeshua is Mashiach, that Yeshua is the Messiah? Do you believe that with all of your heart? Then you are Jewish. You are not a Gentile. You are Jewish, you are not a Gentile. Rav Shaul says this. He says, you at one time were Gentiles, were Goyim, were pagans, were idolaters. You no longer are. You are now, he says in Ephesians, a part of the commonwealth. Literally what he says in the Greek is, you are a citizen of Israel. In Romans, he takes it even further. He says, you are grafted into the tree that is Israel. You are a branch of the tree which is Israel. You are of the seed of Abraham. your father.
Excuse me.
Yes,
And what chapter of Ephesians is that?
I believe chapter 2. Okay. Also, and I'm sorry I haven't been keeping up with you here. No, because we're not that far yet. I jumped ahead. Oh, because we're at the... Go back. Go back. No, we already did that. Go for it. Did that. Come on, come on, come on. Don't be slow. Okay, that's where we were, right? And this one? And this one?
Yes.
And this one? And that's where we were. All right, so, any other questions? Any questions so far? Are you confused?
No.
I hope you're excited, because now you can say with full assurance, I know, I'm of Israel. It doesn't matter if you were born into a Gentile home. You're of Israel. Why? You came in through a tzaddik, which is pure Jewish idea. This is pure Talmudic idea, that you came in through a rabbi who is a tzaddik. Tzaddik means righteous man. You came in through a righteous man. So you also are counted among the citizens of Israel and the children of Abraham. In fact, a person today who converts to Israel, converts to Judaism, I should say, is actually called, you are allowed to choose your Jewish name, but you cannot choose your Jewish last name because you don't have a last name, because you don't know what tribe you came in under. So when you convert to Judaism, from being a Gentile to being a Jew, you come in under the term Ben Avraham, son or child of Abraham. You are a child of Abraham. You are grafted into Abraham. Okay? That's what you are, and that's exactly what Paul is talking about in Romans chapter 11. That you're grafted in.
So on your legal paperwork, it would say that? Or
If for example, if you were to go to if you were to go to an Orthodox synagogue, and you would, and by the way, it's not easy for you to do it. Okay, first, the reason why it's not easy is because you go in and you say, I want to convert to Judaism, and they're going to tell you no, and they will tell you at least 3 times no, because they want to make sure, because you have to keep coming back and asking over and over again, because they want to make sure. Why? Because they've had people come in and say that they were converting to Judaism that turned around and slit their throats. Turned them in. They've been through horrendous things. So don't get upset with them when they tell you no, and when they keep their distance from you. Okay? I keep my distance from you because you're sick. And I don't want to get, no, I'm just playing with you.
I don't want to get sick.
I don't want to get sick. They keep their distance from you because you, in past times, we were a danger to them. Okay? We were the reason that 6 million of them were slaughtered in the last century. All right, so, so you cannot, it would be difficult for you to convert. In order for you to convert to any type of normative Judaism would require you to deny Yeshua. Okay? You must deny Yeshua. There are a few sneaky rabbis who will sneak you in. The way they sneak you in is they just don't ask you the question. Okay? I was filling out, I was trying to get on an online forum, Jewish forum, a couple of days ago, and one of the questions was, do you deny Yeshua's Mashiach? I'm not going to answer that. Why would they want to know that? To deny me access. And so, understand, that's the way it is. Okay? But if you were to convert, then yes, on your paper, and you do receive a paper, okay, from the rabbi stating, so that you can show to whoever asks you, because when you walk into a synagogue, guess what? They're going to ask you. They'll do it politely. So what synagogue have you been to before? Were you a member there? These kinds of, they will ask you some questions, okay, in the form of getting to know you, but basically it's in the form of getting to know you. Are you really a Jew? And so you have the documentation to give to them to say that, yes, I'm really a Jew. Problematic, it's a problem though, because the Orthodox Jews do not recognize either Reform or Conservative. The ultra-Orthodox do not even recognize the modern Orthodox, and many of the ultra-Orthodox do not even recognize one another. Okay? So don't worry about it. Okay? It's not whether your name is written down on a piece of paper, it's your name written down in the book of life, which we just went through on Yom Kippur. Okay? That's the issue. So these things we don't worry about. But yes, you have claim to the kingdom. When it says that you are a member, when Paul says that you are members of the commonwealth, to have all things in common. So you have, we have commonwealth here in the United States. Not every state is really a state. We have 4 states that are actually called commonwealths. So you have the Commonwealth of Kentucky, of Pennsylvania, of Virginia, and I forget what the other one is, I think Utah. So we have commonwealths here. Basically, it is that we rely on each other, that we share, that we have things in common. Okay, the commonality of it all. Back in old times, in Roman days, that it was called a republic. Yes? Somebody's phone? No, it's mine. It's mine. Okay. So, all right, enough already. Thank you. Has mind of its own. Its mind is better than mine. So, what was I saying? So you'll understand anyway. So you'll understand Paul better. You'll have a better understanding of the things that he's teaching. Let's see what we have here. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to break for 5 minutes, okay? And then we're going to continue here, and we'll finish this lesson tonight in an hour. We'll get it all in and get it done for you. Maybe even give you a peek at next week, okay? If you need to use the restroom, get yourself some coffee, get some water. If you want to chat amongst yourself, whatever, you have 5 minutes. So we were speaking of why learn Hebrew, and so we talked about to become acquainted with your Jewish heritage. That's where I got lost. Have you acquainted with your Jewish heritage that you are grafted in. By the way, the Jewish people are your friends, and you should make it so. And don't wait for them to make it so, because like I said, they don't know where you stand. And anti-Semitism is at its highest mark since World War II in the United States today. Okay, so we need to and that, you know, it was this last summer, a young man threatened to break in and shoot in all synagogues and mosques here in Harlingen. And so, just so everybody knows, we carry. Okay, understand that there are people here who carry, and we're taking some that are taking classes right now to carry. And so we carry. So, yes, we try to. It's a matter of trusting God and being wise. Okay? So, if you go to Israel, you will see guns everywhere. Okay? And that's why, actually, Israel used to have a problem with people coming into the schools with certain types coming into the schools and shooting terrorists and things like that, coming in and shooting the kids. So they made it a law that the teachers were required to carry. Guess what problem they have not had? Guess what problem we still have while we're taking guns away from people? But as an Orthodox Jewish believer, yes, I believe in guns. I believe in weapons. God gave us weapons to protect ourselves, and that's the way it is. Okay, and so we had one of our members here is actually an officer in the DPS, in the Department of Public Safety, and he comes. You saw them here. I think what was it? Yom Kippur or?
No, it was. Kippur evening, they were here.
They were here, right? Okay, yes, it was Yom Kippur evening. He brought his trainee with him. Okay.
Wasn't it? Yeah, it was Sukkot.
Yes, but they were here in uniform
Yes.
on Yom Kippur.
That felt real safe.
So he and his wife are both. He and his wife are both DPS officers, and they both carry. And we have others that we're not going to talk about. We do have others that carry, and so for that, and we actually had there was some of the ones that were here had a conference with the police here in Harlingen, and they advised us to have security to make sure that we were secure. Okay, so we do have security in force when we're here, so understand that. Okay, end of that rabbit trail. So, to learn what has been lost in translation. To learn what has been lost in translation. Because as you very well know, not everything translates well. Okay? David and Nicole can testify to that, right? Not everything from Spanish to English translates well. Okay? And so when a Spanish person tells an English-speaking person a joke, and they don't get the joke, and you say it was lost in translation, right? Okay, so understand that there are a lot of things that are lost in translation. So they translate from the Hebrew to the English. You may get a general idea in many things, or a gist of it in many things, but the expression of it is lost. The picture that you would see in your mind of what this person is trying to get across to you is lost, because that's only found in the Hebrew, literally in the Hebrew Alephbet. You will see that. So this will explain to you a lot of words, what they mean. What does he mean here? What's he saying here? It will actually tell you, the Hebrew lettering will actually tell you what he's saying here. Yes, sir.
Talking about translations, we have so many different translations now for Bibles. I mean, I know a lot of pastors use, King James, New King James. What do you recommend? Especially us that we don't know Hebrew, we can't get it. I have a Tree of Life version.
Right.
What do you recommend?
Okay, so the Tree of Life version is what most people use here, because it is messianic. Okay, it understands the picture from which we're coming. Okay, for Christianity, for me, when I was a Baptist pastor, the ESV was probably the best of all the translations. And when you get into translation, you have to understand that there are different forms of translation. Some are idealistic, and others are I forget the word. Some of them are more word-for-word translations, and some of them are more like you take the verse and you get the idea of the verse, and then you put it like in common phrasing, common phraseology. Okay, like the NIV is that.
Kind of like the field.
Right. The King James is more by definition of word. And the ESV is even more so. You will find that the ESV uses what we would probably think of as being stilted language, that it's not smooth, that it doesn't sound like smooth talk or something we would say today. And that's because it is translated by word definition, and then put in a proper order, and things have to be added in or taken out or changed so that in our English mind we can understand what is being said there. And that a lot of times it doesn't come across. Okay? You will learn a lot if you go into the Hebrew. And you see what's being said in Hebrew, and you understand what's being said in Hebrew, and then all of a sudden, boom, not only is it saying this, it's actually in layers. The Hebrew is actually in layers. It's a layered text. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. All right, so what you lose in translation. To be able to see or find the origin of the word. What do you mean when you're saying that? What is the root of that word? That's one of the favorite things that I do. I'm a linguist, okay? Language is my strength, is my forte. I'm a linguist. One of the things that I love to do is see the root of the word. Whether it's English or Spanish, it's called that, this process is called etymology. E-T-Y-M-O-L-O-G-Y, etymology. Etymology is the study of words. The study of roots, the study of the root of that word. Where did that word come from? And so I love to see what the root is, because if you have the root, you have the foundation of the definition of that word. You're seeing where it's actually coming from. Okay? So, the origin of the word. Every Hebrew word, almost every Hebrew word has a 3-letter root. And every root, every letter, puts its definition into that word. Now there are some words that it's only 1 letter, and there are some that are only 2 letters, but nearly all Hebrew is a 3-letter root word. Almost every word in Hebrew is a 3-letter root, and then you change it by adding suffixes and prefixes to it. Okay? That is why if you're just going through, the transliteration is okay. But if you're really wanting to understand the word, for example, we'll have in a transliteration, we have the letter V, but there are 2 ways in Hebrew of saying the letter V. One is beit without the dagesh, and the other is vav. So how do you know whether it's a beit without the dagesh or whether it's vav? Because that's going to change the definition of the word, the term of the word, the foundation of the word. It's also going to change the number of the word. All of this comes into play. So it helps you with that. There are plays on words in Hebrew. For example, the eye of the needle. Yeshua said that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. There's plays on words. We'll get into them. By the way, a camel going through the eye of a needle. A camel. And what does he compare it to? A camel going through the eye of a needle is compared to a rich man trying to get into heaven. A camel, in Hebrew, the gimel, gamel is actually for camel. Gimel, the letter G, represents a rich man. He's making a play on words, on the letters, on the alphabet. Okay? So you'll better understand these things. Acrostics. What is an acrostic? It's where you take this letter, this from this word, this letter from this word, this letter from this word. Up or down. Across. They make acrostics. I'm going to show you an acrostic in just a moment. Okay? Idioms, allegories, word pictures that are only seen in the Hebrew. You can't see it in the English. And this is why so many times you wonder what... Now remember, what is Paul's first language? Hebrew. All of the writers, John, what is his first language? Matthew, Mark, Luke, what are their first languages? Luke is probably Greek, okay, because he was a Roman citizen or a Greek citizen. He was not a Jew. He was a clinger on. He was a hanger on. He was a, what do you call him? You know, the crowd, following the rock stars. You know, he was one of them. He was a groupie. Yes, he's a groupie. Luke was a groupie, hanging on. He would just show up. Anyway, so all of these things are found in the Hebrew. Also, it deepens your appreciation and your love for Israel. Why? Because you come to know more. You come to know better. And so you have a better understanding. I'm going to tell you tonight that probably 97% of all of Christianity is anti-Semitic in one form or other. In their thinking, in the way they do things, in the way they think things, in their side-by-side theology, that is, Christians are saved one way while the Jews were in the Old Testament were saved another way, or that that the church has replaced the Jewish people, that the church has replaced Israel, those kinds of thinkings and all of that. And 97% Even in evangelicalism, which used to be staunchly pro-Jewish and pro-Israeli, you're finding that more than 50% of evangelicals are anti-Israel, are pro-Palestinian, and anti-Jew, anti-Semitic. Okay? So be careful with that. Lutheran, and by the way, we do not celebrate, what was it that they just celebrated a couple of weeks ago? No, not Halloween. The Lutherans.
Is it the Day of the Dead? Or?
No, the nailing of the 99 Thesis on the door of Wurmberg.
Martin Luther Day.
But yes, but the Reformation Day. Reformation Day. We do not celebrate Reformation Day here. Okay? Why do we not celebrate Reformation Day? And we do not celebrate Martin Luther King.
I say King.
I'm sorry. We do we do celebrate him. He was a pretty good guy actually. He was bad mouthed in his day. But we do not celebrate Martin Luther. We do not celebrate Calvin, John Calvin. We do not celebrate that. Why? Because they were anti-Semitic. They believed in destroying the Jewish people. They believed in killing. Martin Luther actually said to lock up all the Jews in their houses and set their houses, lock them up in their synagogues and set their synagogues on fire. So guess what Hitler, his antecedent, did on the words of Martin Luther? You Google it. Google's your friend. It's there. Okay? So these were not good people. Martin Luther actually started out as a friend of the Jewish people. And he, when he could not convert the Jews, he turned against them and decided to just burn them all. That they all just deserve to go to hell. Okay? So, one evangelical that we do like from the past is his name is Delitzsch, and he was a German theologian, because he actually became so friendly with the rabbis in Germany. This was back in the 1500s, I believe. He became so friendly with the rabbis in Germany that they actually helped him translate the Brit Chadashah, the New Testament, into Hebrew, so that we have what is called the Delitzsch New Testament, which is the Hebrew version of the New Testament. Okay? And so we look at him, and he was a pretty good guy. All right. It helps us to better understand various schools of thought. So you've heard of the Pharisees, you've heard of the Sadducees, you've heard of the Zealots, okay? You've heard of the apostles and the disciples. So these are all different factions. By the way, there was no Christianity. Yeshua did not make a new religion. He was a Jew. He was born a Jew. He lived a Jew. He died a Jew. And he's coming back a Jew. And he's going to cause all of the world to follow Torah. So what are we doing? We're getting a head start. The question was asked, are we all going to speak Hebrew? Yes, you're getting a head start. Okay? You won't have to spend the time learning the Hebrew alphabet because you already know it. Cross that one off your messianic bucket list. All right. So better understand various schools of thought. So in the Brit Chadashah, you will hear me using that. And by the way, where I can use Hebrew terms, I'm going to use Hebrew terms. Why? Because you're learning Hebrew. Okay? So Brit, everyone say Brit. Chadashah. From the back of the throat. Not H. Chadashah. Okay? Yes. It's kind of like, yeah. It comes from the back of the throat. In the Teutonic languages, you'll have that like Nacht, right? You're a Teuton? The German languages, all right? So in German, Nacht, night, the word for night. My mother and father were both have parents from Germany. and so we grew up with a little bit of German. So Nacht means night. Guten Nacht, have a good night. So in fact, in the morning I go in and I see my mom. I would go in, and before I got sick, I would go in and see my mom every morning, and I would tell her I'd go into her bedroom, and she'd be in bed laying there eating her breakfast, and I would go in and I would tell her Boker Tov, good morning, Hebrew, and she would tell me back in German, Guten Morgen. And so if I saw her in the afternoon, she would tell me Guten Tag and Guten Nacht, and she has, I don't have it all down. I didn't study it that much, but I mean, when we were growing up, she would tell us these little phrases in German, and we'd look at her like, what does that mean? And so she would tell us in English. But anyway, so who are these groups, these schools of thought? So the Pharisees, number one, you need to know, they were not all bad people, and they were not all hypocrites. In fact, most of them were not. In fact, they were the friends of the people. The people loved the Prushim. They were the beloved ones. And this is why Rabbinic Judaism today, the Judaism of the rabbis, what we call it Rabbinic Judaism of today, is the descendant of the Pharisees. What we know as Judaism today is the descendant of the Pharisees. All the other Judaisms left, are gone. They disappeared. When the temple was destroyed, when the Romans destroyed Israel, all of the other ones disappeared. Understand this, orthodoxy, fundamentalism is always important. Because when everything is being destroyed, that's what you have to fall back on. Okay, so when they were destroying everything else, guess what? All the Jews left their reform, their conservative whatever, and they fell back to Orthodox Judaism. And it was not until the later 1800s that the Reformed Judaism broke out in Europe and planted its, evil seed here in the United States. Why evil seed? Because it is no more believing in Torah, and they don't believe in anything that the common Christian doesn't believe in. They eat pork, they eat shellfish, they don't care, they don't keep Shabbat, they don't do, the Torah's not for them. It's just there. It's good. They are good stories. They are basically the liberal side of Judaism. Orthodox Judaism is the conservative side of Judaism. This is why you will find most Reform Jews are liberal in their politics. Most Orthodox Jews are conservative in their politics. I will tell you, I do not get into politics here if I can help it. Okay? You are what you are. I am what I am. I'm not going to debate you about what I believe. I believe what I believe, and there are reasons why I believe it. And I will tell you this very simply as far as politics, and I don't want you talking politics here. I always ask in the classes, we're not going to sit and discuss politics. But my conceptions are these. My personal politics is this. Number one, how does it agree with Scripture? Number two, how does it agree with the Jewish people? And number three, how does it agree with Israel? Those are my concerns. How does this person agree with Scripture? How do they agree with the Jewish people? And how do they agree with Israel? If they do not agree with Scripture, if they do not agree with the Jewish people, if they do not agree with Israel, I'm not for them. I am not pro them in any way, form, or fashion. Okay? That's the way it is. And that's the way Orthodox Judaism is. So that explains to you why certain Jews vote one way and certain Jews vote another way. The Prushim were very conservative. They were the well-loved. They were well-loved. Okay? They were not the hypocrites that the church... if you're a hypocrite today in Christianity, they call you what? You Pharisee. Like it's a bad word. Okay? Ready? It's a check here. Are you ready? Yeshua was a Prushi. He was a Pharisee. How do we know? He studied under the rabbis. In fact, he taught the rabbis when he went to the temple when he was 12 years old. Remember, they questioned him and they wondered at him. Number two, I told you that they were well loved by the people. Number two, there were two parties in the Prushim. There were two parties, two political, if you would, two political parties of the Prushim. So the Prushim was actually split in two. So you can't say all the Prushim. You cannot just say all the Prushim, because they were not all the same. There were different sides. There were different classes, different houses, actually, is what they were called. There was one house called Beit Shammai, the house of Shammai, Shammai, house of Shammai. And there was Beit Hillel, the house of Hillel, Hillel, Shammai and Hillel. Hillel was the founder of the Prushim. He was the father of the Pharisees. His grandson, back then the rabbinate was the order was handed down like family, okay, like the family treasure was, to the eldest son. Okay, so Hillel handed down the headship of the Prushim to his son, who handed it down to his son, who was the head of the Prushim in the days of Yeshua. And his name should not only be familiar to you, but it is written in Scripture. It occurs in the New Testament, in the Brit Chadashah. His name is Gamliel. Everyone say Gamliel. His name is written in the book of Acts as Gamaliel. And he ends up, and Paul also mentions him, he ends up being Paul's teacher, Paul's rabbi. He's the rabbi of Paul. Paul is his student. Not only that, but Paul is to Gamliel what John was to Yeshua. The closest, the beloved. In fact, Gamliel was grooming Paul to be the next head of the Sanhedrin and of the Prushim.
When you say John, you mean
The apostle.
John the Baptist?
Yeah, no, John the disciple. The beloved one. And John wrote the book, the Gospel of John, and then he wrote the 3 Johns at the end. 1 John, 2 John, 3 John. And Revelation. So Paul is to Gamliel what Yeshua is to Yeshua, or what John is to Yeshua. Okay? Is everybody with me here? Everybody with me so far? You understand what I'm explaining to you? So there's this very close relationship. And he's being groomed. He's being groomed to step up to be the next leader. Now remember, who is Gamliel? He's the grandson of Hillel, the founder of the Prushim. In all of the disputes with Yeshua and the Prushim, 99% of the time, he is arguing with the house of Shammai, because they were very strict. They were letter of the law Pharisees. They believed in the letter of the law. So when it says poke an eye out, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, they took that literally, and they wanted to poke your eye out or take your tooth out if you did that to somebody else. They were very literal in their interpretations. They were also very cruel. There's a story that a Gentile wanted to convert to Judaism, so he went to the house of Shammai and he asked Shammai, I would like to convert to Judaism. Can you explain to me the Torah while standing on one foot? And Shammai took a broom and beat him with it and chased him out of the synagogue. So he went to the house of Hillel and he said to Hillel, I want to convert to Judaism. Can you explain to me Judaism while standing on one foot? And Hillel said, of course. He picked up one foot while standing on one foot. He said, you shall not do unto others as you would not like have done to you. And the Gentile converted. And later told Hillel, I was not meaning for you to stand on one foot. I was willing to stand on one foot while you taught me. You see, Shammai lost his temper for nothing. He was not being smart aleck. He was saying, I'm willing to go to another extent in order to learn this from you. Hillel went by the philosophy of the heart of the scripture, of the Torah, the heart of the law. What's the heart of, what is it trying to do? And what is Torah trying to do? To do to you? To make you pay penance, to make you pay a price, to make you give up, to pay a debt, a fine, to cause you to lose your finger, or your leg, or your head. The purpose of Torah is to bring you to what we call teshuvah, to bring you to repentance, to turn you around, to return. That's what teshuvah means, to return you, to bring you back. Some punishments were harder than others, and it goes up to the death penalty. But understanding that that's not what where they're headed. That's not what they wanted. That's not what God wanted. God simply wants you to turn around from what you're doing. And by the way, that's our purpose here, to get people to turn. You look at the world that we're in today. The people need to turn. That's why we're here. That's what Christianity was supposed to be doing. That's supposed to be the mission of Christianity. It's not working out so well. In fact, Christianity goes the way of the world. They're just one step behind, that's all. So the bands in Christianity that you are hearing today are the bands of the world that you were hearing yesterday. The things that you are hearing, the acceptances of things of Christianity today are the acceptances of things of the world yesterday. They're just one step behind. They're not turning anybody. They're being turned themselves for the evil. Yeshua is strict on this, and he says no man can serve two masters. You serve the one and you hate the other. But you choose which master it is. You can't sit on the fence. You have to choose. You have to choose. So you have Hillel in the house of Hillel, and you have Shammai in the house of Shammai. The house of Hillel is for the heart, in order to get you to return, in order to turn you gently, softly, if you can. But if not, with fierceness and judgment and wrath. Even as Rav Shaul says, that saving them with fear. In the book of Hebrews, some you save with fear, some you save with gentleness, others you save with fear of the fire. That's Judaism. That's Torah. That's what it's about. You try to save people with gentleness and compassion, but if that doesn't work, use the switch, because you don't want anyone to go to the fire. You don't want anyone to stand before God with sin upon them, with a sentence upon them. And so that's the Prushim. The Tzedakим. Everyone say Tzedakim. These are the Sadducees. Okay? Why were the Sadducees? Because they were sad, you see. That's an English pun that you would not get in Hebrew. Anyway. The word Sadducee comes from the Hebrew word tzadakim, tzadak. Tzadak, to be righteous. Tzedakah, righteousness. An act of righteousness is called a tzedakah. An act of goodness, a good deed, a good work. So a person who is good is called a tzedaki. Okay? And we'll get into this as we get into the Alephbet and the spellings and things like that. But you see the relation. You can see the relationship in the sound of the word. Tzedak, Tzedakim, Sadducees. The Tzedakim were hated. They were the ones in political power. By the way, it was not the Prushim who crucified Yeshua. It was the Sadducees. It was the Sadducees who had him condemned to death. How do we know? Because it was the Kohen Hagadol. and it was his Sanhedrin, which accused and had executed Yeshua. Because the Kohen Hagadol, the position of the high priest, was sold by Rome to the highest bidder. And so it was the Sadducees, the Tzaddikim, that held that position. The problem with the Tzaddikim is that they were Torah only. Sola Scriptura, only Scripture. But more than only Scripture, they were only, and by the way, there is no such thing as only Scripture. And if you see on certain churches and whatever, and you see the sign Sola Scriptura, which is common among the Presbyterians and certain of those groups, Calvinists, Calvinism and such as that, and they,
The reformers?
the Reformationists, yes, the reformers and all of those, and they say that they're sola scriptura. No, they're not. Nobody can be. You cannot be. There's nothing new under the sun. There's nothing new. There are no new ideas. When you come up with a new idea, that's great because it's only new to you. It's not new to everybody. There's nothing new under the sun. Who said that? Shlomo HaMelech, Solomon the king. Okay, so there's nothing new that's under the sun. They got their understanding of Scripture from somewhere, from somebody. They didn't just go through Scripture reading line by line and come up with these ideas. Everything comes from Talmud. You will hear people in Christianity and Messianicism say Talmud is bad, 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 bad. No. They don't understand what the Talmud is. That's the problem. The same thing is true with the Zohar and Kabbalah. And people say that these things are bad, 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 and that's magic, and that's black magic, and that's Satanism, and all that kind of stuff. No. The modern form of Kabbalah, yes, it is. And I don't want you getting into it. You're going to be learning Kabbalah, you just don't know. Okay? You're going to be learning Zohar. Okay? And I will point it out for you. But understand this, if it were not for Zohar and Kabbalah, guess what? There would be no Mashiach. We would have no understanding of Mashiach, because nowhere in the Tanakh, nowhere in what is called the Old Testament are these terms and these understandings. If you were to go in the days before Yeshua and you were to read Isaiah 53, how would you know that that pertained to the Messiah? How would you? Because Messiah is not mentioned in any of that. In fact, Israel is mentioned in the chapter before. And so the context is Israel. So when you read on the web that this pertains to Israel, guess what? They're right, because it does. The scripture says in black and white right there that this pertains to Israel. It is Israel who's being mentioned. But the Kabbalist, the Zoharist, he comes up and he figures out how? By the letters of the word, by the Hebrew. He figures out what the depth of the understanding is, and he says, you know what? This applies to Mashiach. So before Yeshua was even born, they already knew that Isaiah 53 was a messianic portion of Scripture. And they had already declared it so. You and I, it's easy. We look back at it and we say, well, that fits the Messiah. That fits Yeshua's life. That fits his crucifixion. That fits his burial and his resurrection. That fits it. You can see it right there. It fits him. But what about before Yeshua even was born? How would you be able to say that? You could not, unless you were a Zoharist. Who were the Zoharists? Who were the Kabbalists? They were the wise men. Are you ready? From Babylon. They were the students of Daniel. These are the Zoharists. And guess what? Were they right or wrong? Well, they're the ones that followed the star all the way to Beit Lechem. Were they right or were they wrong? They were right.
Like the Magi, like what they were called the Magi?
You got it. That's it. There are three wise men. Well, there weren't three wise men. Nowhere in Scripture does it say three wise men. Let's keep it literal. Let's keep it literal. Okay? It just says the wise men.
Where do you think it's a
That's tradition though, man, come on.
It's church tradition. That's Christian tradition.
So there could have been more.
There probably were more. They're probably doubtful that only 3 men would have crossed the desert like that all by themselves. There was probably an entourage. Okay. Anyway, yes, the wise men were actually disciples of Daniel, who lived approximately, I believe it was approximately 600 years prior. Okay, so it really wasn't that much of a length of time. In fact, you have Jewish groups, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox Jewish groups that started back in the 1300s that are still in existence today, still following the same rabbi with the same traditions. They actually still wear the same clothes that their rabbi wore 100, 200, 300, 400 years ago. Okay, we'll get into more of that sometime when we get into these lessons. A lot of these things we'll get into, you're going to, literally, it's going to blow your mind what the actual understanding is of to be a Talmid, to be a disciple of Yeshua, what this was actually saying. It means nothing of what you or I think it means, or have been taught it means. So you have the Tzaddikim, they were hated. They're the ones who crucified Yeshua. You have the Kanayim, the Zealots. This has to do, some of them, the Zacharias, and what were they called? The people out in the wilderness, out in Megiddo. Huh? Yes, the Essenes, thank you. And those kinds of people. The people of the scrolls and all of that. Okay, they sacrificed, they would rather commit suicide than to give in to the Romans. Okay, Masada. The people of Masada. All right, so that was a big group actually that were out there. And they were a sect of Judaism. All of these were sects of Judaism. They all fought each other. They hated each other. They would actually kill each other sometimes when they got the opportunity. In fact, they were the house of Shaddai, actually, the house of Hillel actually rose up one time against the house of Shaddai and slaughtered many of Shaddai's disciples. Even among the Pharisees, who we would look at as being the good guys, but it was problematic. And so there were actually wars and battles and whatever, gang warfare taking place between these groups. These zealots were not only the Sakai, they were not only killing the Romans and such as that, they were actually killing fellow Jews, fellow Israelis at the time. So they hated the Prushim. They did not like the Prushim, and they really did not like the Selakim. And then you have Yeshua. One of these days we will get into Yeshua. Some of you know this, but we're going to get into Yeshua and why he's called Jesus in English. It is not a bad word. It is not the name of idolatry or whatever you read on the internet. That is all uneducated foolishness. There is a reason why in English we call him Jesus. What do you call him in Dutch? Jesus, okay, which is what he's called in German as well, I believe, something along those lines. In Latin, he's called Jesu, okay. In Greek, he's called Jesus, and it all has to do with transliterating from Hebrew to Greek to Latin to the Teutonic languages, of which English is one. English is a Germanic language, okay. It doesn't stand alone. English from America came from English from England. The English people from England, the pure English people, were the Angles, Angles, the Angles. They came from Germany. They were a Teutonic tribe that crossed what's the name of that ocean there? My chemo's kicking in, my chemo brain's kicking in. Between France and Great Britain, the sea right there. The cliffs of Dover.
Well,
Huh?
I say, wow, I don't remember.
No, it's you have the Atlantic, and then you have the English, the British Isles, and then you have what's there, and then you have France. Come on, Dutchman, help. What's the name of the sea between England and Europe?
Channel.
Huh? The North Sea and the English Channel. Yes, okay, so all of that there, okay? So the Angles crossed over all of that. Golly, just to get through this. The Angles crossed over all of that. Crossed over that to get to where England was, and whoever was there, they simply wiped them out and they set up their own kingdom, okay? And the Romans came in then and actually took over then. And they called it Britannia. That's where Britain comes from. They called it Britannia because that is the term the people of tin. Okay? Because in southern in Wales and that area there, they mine tin. Tin, tin, like tin cans. They mine tin, the metal. Okay? And that's where the term Britannia came from. That's Latin. That was Latin from the Romans. They're the ones who gave it the term Britannia. Okay, so the people of tin. All right, anyway, so the Shlachim, who are the Shlachim? They are the apostles. This is the word for apostles. You have the Talmidim, and then they become Shlachim. Shlachim means to be sent out. Shlachim means to be an ambassador or one who is sent out. It comes from the word shalach, shlacha. Shlacha means to be sent out. We have this week's parsha is called Lech Lecha. Go, you go. Okay, Lech Lecha, you go. And so to be sent out. So Yeshua tells them what? Go into all the world. So they are shlachim. They have been sent out on a mission. And that's why they're called apostles. Okay? Of whom Rav Shaul is counted as one by his own understanding. And no one disagrees with him. No one disagrees with him. Now, these shlachim, to be a shlachim, to be a shlachi, to be an apostle, to be one sent out, had this requirement that you had seen Yeshua face to face. Panim le panim, face to face. Okay? Of those disciples, of those apostles. Now, you say, well, then how can Paul be considered an apostle? Because he had an encounter with Yeshua face to face on the road to Damascus. And Yeshua sent him out on a mission there. I am going to send you and I'm going to use you. Okay.
How much time was there between the resurrection and the time that he met Paul?
Of Rav Shaul, probably a few years distance, maybe like 5. One of the things that we'll go down the rabbit hole and we're probably going to end up here a little bit. One of the things that I was going to share with you, but I was running out of time, but since you brought it up, I'll go ahead and share it with you. Did Paul know Yeshua? Did Paul know Jesus? Why? How? Prove it. You must have context. Huh?
He was a rich man.
He was a rich man. Well, that's good enough, but there were a lot of rich men. So how did he know him?
Because he was killing his followers.
Well, that would simply, I mean, I could kill the followers of the governor or whatever. That doesn't mean I know him. In fact, he was sent to do that. He was actually a shlachi on both sides. He was a shlachi from the Sanhedrin, and then he became a shlachi for Yeshua. Okay, so
He was a defector.
remember, I told you somebody was grooming him. Who was grooming him? Gamliel, who is what? The head of the Sanhedrin. So you remember in John chapter 3, Yeshua meets a very rich Prushi, a teacher, a rabbi, very famous rabbi of the Prushim. And he gives us his name. Do you remember what his name is? Nicodemus. Very good. Nicodemus, that is his Greek name, his Greek transliteration. His name literally in Hebrew is Nachdimon. 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 Nachdimon is actually spoken of in the Talmud as a man well beloved. Remember what I told you, that the Prushim were well beloved. by the people, that Nachdimon was well beloved by Israel, particularly the citizens of Jerusalem. He was probably the wealthiest man in all of Israel of his time. He also was a trained rabbi who worked in the temple. So that tells you he's high up. Not only that, what the Talmud tells us is that he and Gamliel were best friends. They're best friends. Which means what? They went everywhere together. One of the things about a Talmud is that wherever his rabbi went, he went. That's why you find Jesus walking along, and here come his disciples after him. Jesus walking along, and here are his disciples. Jesus, and here's his disciples. Right? Everywhere you find Jesus, you find what? His disciples. So everywhere you find Gamliel, what? You're going to find Paul, Shaul,
And Nicodemus.
and Nicodemus. And Nicodemus goes to Yeshua at night and starts questioning him. We think this, and we know this, and we, who's this we? Because Nachdimon, Nicodemus, was the vice president. Gamliel was the president of the Sanhedrin. Mind you, the Sanhedrin, this is the top court of Israel. Gamliel is the president. Nachdimon is his assistant, is his vice president. Do you think that Nachdimon kept it quiet from Gamliel that he went to Yeshua? They're best friends. Do you think that maybe it's possible that Gamliel agreed for Nachdimon to go question Yeshua? Think about these things. Now there was a certain rich young ruler who came to Yeshua and asked him, Rabbi, we know that you are good. A rich young ruler. Mark it, a rich young ruler who came to Yeshua and asked him, Rabbi, we know that you are good. What must I do? And Yeshua responds to him, how is it that you can say I am good? There was no one good but God. And the rich young ruler goes on and says, how can I have eternal life? And what does Yeshua ask him? He asks him with a question, which is a very Jewish thing to do. You answer a question with a question. Why? To make you think. To make the student think. And he says, to follow the Torah. And Yeshua tells him, you have said correctly. You know what the Torah says, to obey your parents, to be kind to the poor, to do this, to do that. The rich young ruler says to him, I've done these things since I was a little child. Then what else? What am I lacking? What else do I need to do? And Yeshua says to him, take everything that you possess and sell it and give away the money to feed the poor and the widows and the orphans, and come and follow me. And the scripture says that the rich young ruler turned away sadly. He walked away from Yeshua. And this is where Yeshua says, it is easier for a camel to enter through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to inherit the kingdom of heaven. And the Talmudim questioned him and said to him, Master, if he cannot enter in, Now listen very carefully. This rich young ruler, if he cannot enter in, how can any of us enter in? And Yeshua answered them, saying, with men it would be impossible, but with God all things are possible. I'm going to point to you two things here. Number one, he did not tell them to forsake everything they had. And he did not tell them that they had to give away all of their wealth. He told this one that. Remember what he says to Kepha, to Peter, on the shore of Galilee, after the resurrection, when Kepha asks him about John. Well, what's going to happen to him? And Yeshua basically told him in good old Southern English, mind your own business. Right? What I have for him has nothing to do with you. It was not about the riches. It was about the surrender. It's the surrender of whatever you're holding back. Of whatever I'm holding back. But the reason why the Talmudim were amazed that this one could not enter the kingdom of heaven, that Yeshua said he could not enter the kingdom of heaven, was because of who he was. This rich young ruler. A ruler came to Yeshua by night. Yeshua says to him, are you not a teacher? And it was Nachdimon. Nachdimon is best friends with whom? And Gamliel is grooming whom? And Paul is exceedingly wealthy because the only way he could be groomed by someone like Gamliel is that his family is exceedingly wealthy. Think about it. It was because he was Shaul. They knew Shaul, they knew Gamliel, they knew Nachdimon, the Talmudim knew them, and how good of lives they lived following Torah. And they looked in surprise, in absolute surprise, that if this follower of Torah, as much a length that he goes to follow Torah, if he cannot enter the kingdom of heaven, that's what they're asking. How can we enter? And the truth is, you can't. Nor can I, nor could they. Which is why, what was Yeshua's response? With men, it's impossible for you to enter the kingdom. But what? With God, all things are possible. Now I'm going to tell you what I think that verse is about. Just me. Take it or leave it. Just me. But what he was telling them, from my perspective, is even he shall be saved one day. You think he's walking away and you think that there's no hope for him? I'm not giving up on him. Why? Because I can save anybody. Even him. The most stubborn heart in all the world. I can save him. And what does Paul say? I was the most stubborn man in all the world. I was the sinner of sinners. I've been rich and I've been poor and I've been sickness and I've been in health. He said, of all of the followers of Yeshua, I'm the one who does not deserve to be a follower. Do you see the picture now? You see how it all ties together? It's not easy to tie all of that together without the input of the Talmud. It's the Talmud who tells us who Nicodemus was and what Gamliel was to him. And so why Gamliel is so important to Paul and why all of that is so important to the story. Because it just throws it in there. Well, what's the purpose of this? God doesn't throw anything in without purpose. Everything has its purpose. Every word, every sentence, every word even the structures of the sentence, even the letters of the words are placed there by God's hand himself. I'm going to prove it to you. In the Torah scroll, there are letters that are big, there are letters that are small. In other words, they're bigger than the line. In Hebrew, the letters are just one size all the way across. But sometimes, like the very first bait, the very first B, the bait is large. There's a reason for that. It's not just that way. God did that. And then some of them, the letters are small. Do you know that that the vav, in some places the vav is frontwards, in some places, and in another place it's backwards? And you're reading along and you're saying, how come that vav is backwards? Or the nun? Because God's speaking to you on a different level. There's the plain meaning of the text there, but now here's another level for you to add on to it. And God's trying to, there are places where there are spaces. Places usually there's just a space between word and there's no punctuation. In Hebrew, there's no punctuation. So how do you know when you come to the end of the sentence? They stop the line there and they start a new line, and that's a new sentence. There's no commas or apostrophes or colons or semicolon, none of that. So when you're reading a Torah scroll, you don't have any of that to help you. And you don't have the Alephbet, you don't have the vowels, the vocalizations to help you because they're not in the Torah scroll either. How do you know all of that? How do you find these things? So he's got messages, but he's got layers of messages. He has messages on top of messages. And then even under that, he's got more messages for you. And he has secret messages. There are mysteries in there that God purposely hid for you to find out, for you to look them out. And this is something that God gave to me, that I looked out, that I searched out. Because one day I said, what's Gamliel got to do with all of this? So I started studying. And I found out what he had to all do with it. You know that Nachdimon died? Nachdimon died, not a wealthy man, but in absolute poverty. Nicodemus died in absolute poverty, according to the Talmud. He died an outcast. He did not even have clothing anymore. He lived in rags. He went from being the wealthiest to stop it. He went from being the wealthiest to being the poorest of all of Israel. Remember when Yeshua says that the foxes have their holes in the ground, the birds have their nests in the trees, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head? You remember what he was talking about? Because most people imply that to be that he had no place to sleep. What he was telling them was he doesn't even have a grave to be buried in. He has no grave. He said, I'm so rejected by these people, they won't even give me a grave to be buried in. Nachdimon followed in his footsteps. He did not have a grave to be buried in. He was so stricken by poverty, he had nothing left. The Talmud tells us that he lost his money by giving it away to a bunch of rogues and thieves. That's what they call the people of Haderech. Haderech is the Hebrew term, the way. Who were the way? Who were the people of the way? That was the name for the followers of Yeshua. They called his followers the way. It was another sect of Judaism. They were called Haderech, the way. Why? They took this name to themselves because Yeshua said, I am Anochi Haderech. I am the way, the truth, the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. These were the rogues and the thieves. Are you surprised that the people who put Yeshua to death called his followers rogues and thieves? They put them in prison. They beat them multiple times. They killed them. Rav Shaul, Paul was included even on the assassination of Stephen, the first martyr, Stephanos. Stephanos is a Greek word that means crown. It's the Hebrew word keter, K-E-T-E-R. Stephanos means crown, keter.
At that event is where Paul is also mentioned. The guys that were
He's a witness.
doing the throwing.
Correct. He is as culpable as anyone else in what happens there. So, who are the rogues and the thieves and such, of which these rabbis are speaking? The followers of Yeshua. They're known in Israel today as Notzrim. Everyone say Notzrim, which means the Nazarenes. By the way, that is the Israeli term for Christian today. A Notzrim. You are a follower of the Nazarene. Yes.
So, why do you think that Paul's name wasn't mentioned as a rich young man?
Because that is a Jewish way. He gives you hints, and you find it out. You fish it out. That's one of the things you're going to learn here. One of the things you're going to learn through the as we learn the Alephbet. That he doesn't just throw things out there. Some things he throws out there. Some things he wants you to dive under the water for. Some things he makes you go out and fish for. Okay? He wants you to do some searching, some of the work. Why? Because as Rav Shaul said, you are no longer supposed to be drinking milk. You're supposed to be eating meat. It's not just the simple things of salvation anymore. You're supposed to be getting in depth. You're supposed to be having this love relationship with God like a husband and a wife. To know the very inside of him. My wife can tell you what I'm going to tell you, what I'm going to think about something, this or that. I can tell you, you ask me something and I'll tell you, ask my wife what she thinks and what I think. And she'll tell you, she can tell you almost all the time what it is that I'm thinking and what I would want, what I would do here. And she'll tell you, this is what he would do, this is what he would want. Because this is how much she knows me. Can you say that about your relationship with God? Because that's the relationship he wants to have with you. You want to have a love relationship, but it's kind of a love relationship of, okay, but don't come any further. Don't come that close. I don't want you that close. So he makes you seek it out. It's like a boyfriend who hides a locket for you somewhere and you have to go find it. More the love of in your relationship because of the action of him hiding it and you having to seek it out and find it, and you think it's so cute and so wonderful and you're just that much closer. Right? Those kinds of things. So it's a hide and seek with him. But it's not really that hard to find if you're serious about finding it. Okay? So here's the relationship. Rav Shaul, student of Gamliel, best friend with Nachdimon, he gives away his wealth as we read in Acts chapter 3, 4, somewhere in there. That they were giving their wealth over to the believers. Remember that at the end of the Gospels it says that Nachdimon was a follower. In fact, he helped to bury Yeshua in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. He was one of the two men. None of the Talmudim were there. He was one of the two men who took Yeshua down off of the cross, washed him, and put him in the tomb. Why? Because Yeshua had said, what? I have no place to lay my head. He was talking about his death. And Joseph of Arimathea made sure that he had a place to lay his head. Nachdimon was there when he was taken off the cross and given that place. Go back to Isaiah 53, the end of it, because he made his grave with the wicked.
Who were the wicked?
Huh?
Who were the wicked?
Who are the wicked? With the people of the earth.
Oh.
Okay, because Joseph gave him a place. So in the end of it all, Nachdemon, following his master, he no longer has a place to lay his head because he gave his wealth away, because he became a follower of Yeshua. And at that point, when he became an open public follower of Yeshua, his name became absolute mud among the people in his level. That means that the whole court, the Sanhedrin, rejected him. All of the rabbis rejected him. Everybody rejected him. He lost his job. He lost his position. He lost everything. He literally lost everything. So that when he died homeless, clothless, and graveless. Now the Talmud is what tells us this. Yet he was still considered to be a tzaddik among them. If he was considered to be a tzaddik among them, a righteous man among them, why would they allow him to be such a thing and to live such a life? They had rejected him because he had accepted Yeshua. The Bible doesn't tell us this. This is found in the Talmud. So, when Gamliel learned of the death, they were no longer best friends, but he still had a soft heart for Gamliel. When he learned of the death of Nachdemon, he had them bring the body of Nachdemon to his own house. He laid his own robe on him, and he buried him in his own front yard. He gave his best friend a place to lay his head. That's the story of Nachdemon. Or as what's his name would say, and that's the rest of the story. Okay? So we end this class tonight. Next week, we will go a little bit more, just to give you a quick, because we're running a little late. Why we learn Hebrew, we're going to give you an introduction to Hebrew. We're going to give you an introduction to the Hebrew Alephbet. Okay? And then we will start that. We'll probably take the first hour, and in the second hour, we will, come on, start with the Hebrew Alephbet. Okay? So next week, be ready. We're going to start with the letters. Your first letter is Aleph. There you go. Okay? So with that, we say God bless you. Laila Tov. Shalom, shalom.